Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Today we're joined by Brian Batko as Steelers minicamp's underway. Aaron Rodgers has arrived. What are our first impressions of him? TJ Watt not showing up. What does that mean for his future contract? And Derrick Harmon, already a starter. Lots to talk about here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We are Steelers writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the Tuesday episodes of Chipped Ham and Football from Brian Batko and all the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Not only will they help you when you're injured in an accident, they'll help you with your workers' compensation. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR so that they can fight for your workers' compensation rights. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, Aaron Rodgers arrived. You and Ray talked about it briefly after practice and minicamp and our first impressions of him. But I want to talk about a specific point that I asked him about when he was, when he arrived, because I thought it was really interesting. When I woke up Tuesday morning, I turned on my computer. I was just getting some things ready, put some notes together, and I saw Cam Heyward's Not Just Football episode posted. And I said, oh, well, it says they're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and it's him and Pat Freiermuth. So let me get in there. And one thing that Cam said right off the bat, he said, I think it's good talking about Aaron Rodgers being signed. He brings leadership. Dude's a 4-time MVP. Nothing to look over. Got a chance to meet him. He's very nice and approachable. Excited to get down to business. He's going to teach a lot of the offensive players about how to go about business, and that's what we need. And then when I asked Aaron Rodgers about that, he kind of seemed like he wasn't all about trying to be the leader that teaches everybody. He says, quote, I think I just want to be a servant leader here and just pass on the knowledge that I have, the 20 years, the experience, and just try and fit in with the guys, get to know them, let them get to know me, and just enjoy the process. Brian, Aaron Rodgers is a guy who has been to organizations where he's brought his offensive coordinator, multiple receivers that he wanted, and many people view that he got Robert Saleh fired with the New York Jets. Do you find that response maybe a bit misleading about what he wants to do for the Steelers? And do you think that tone is going to differ from his experience will be with the Steelers moving forward?
I don't know if I'd say misleading. I mean, I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is at the stage of his career where he's still trying to kind of play coach, GM, offensive coordinator, and quarterback at the same time. I think he sort of alluded to some of those years earlier in his career when he said, this decision to join the Steelers was one from the soul rather than one for his ego. Now,
that was interesting.
Other times, it's sort of difficult to even parse through Aaron Rodgers having Zen-like moments and, whether he's trying to be insightful or what. But I don't know. He almost just seems like detached a little bit. Maybe it goes back to some of the other stuff he was saying about, he wants to have fun again. Playing the game's been fun. All he wants to prove to himself is he can still have fun playing football. I think even in his Enigma documentary on Netflix, which he didn't seem to love getting a couple questions about that today, or maybe he did love it. I don't know. He's kind of hard to read, but he said it's not like obsessed with winning anymore, that's not really what drives him. So I don't know. I don't see this becoming a situation where it's like Aaron Rodgers is trying to steer the ship. If anything, I think if there's a concern or one thing that you wonder about from an upside perspective, the Steelers with Rodgers coming in here is like, how much does he still care? How much is he still like doing every little thing to try to get this team over the hump? I mean, he's not. He wasn't signed with the team by OTAs, so he's already missed a couple weeks and some change for the chance to be a servant leader. But that's more the way I look at it.
So I hear you on that. And I also agree that I don't think he sees this as a place that he wants to flip upside down in what he wants the team to be and make everything that he thinks it should be. I think he might be relieved to not be in an organization that wants to hand him over the keys the way the Jets did. I mean, face it, the approach is already vastly different. The Jets handed him a 3-year, $150 million contract when he arrived. The Steelers are handing him a 1-year, $13 million contract that can get up to $19 million if he meets all the incentives. So, like, that's a very different situation. And also the Steelers as an organization are just differently than the Jets. The Jets have been haphazard for decades. The Steelers, even though they haven't won a playoff game in quite some time, they're nothing but stability, if anything else. Like they consistently make the playoffs. They are in the hunt to win the division. If they fall short of the division, it's usually not by too much. But they're always a team that's in the winning column of things, and pushing to make the playoffs and be in that sense there. And so Aaron Rodgers, I think, might be relieved to just be part of a team where he can be part of a machine and he can be part of something that's progressing forward instead of needing to be the driving force that kind of it creates the culture. And even though Cam Heyward's point is that it'll be good to have him help show some of those offensive guys what it's like to be a really good offensive player, considering he's a 4-time MVP and all the things that he brings. As Mike Tomlin said when asked about what does he bring to the table, he said Google it. But
Google Aaron Rodgers, a lot of stuff's going to come up. It
true.
Beyond winning a Super Bowl and winning MVPs, so that's maybe not the best way to.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to Google about Aaron Rodgers.
And let's be honest, Tomlin kept coming back to just look at his resume. I don't know. Wouldn't, if you were a Steeler fan, wouldn't it give you inspire a little bit more confidence? And maybe I should have followed up with Tomlin. But what about his recent resume engenders some belief that
five wins last year, 8 and 9 in his last year with the Packers.
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, when you keep talking about the body of work for a guy over 2 decades, and that is like the positive spin for making a move, that's a little concerning when Steelers fans don't care what he did in Green Bay. No one's beating their chest because Aaron Rodgers had a generational run with the Packers. All they care about is what is he going to do for the Steelers. So, I get it. That is his story, but some of that was a long time ago, and some of it was still 3 or 4 years ago. So, I don't know. At some point, Mike Tomlin said a lot of the same leadership stuff about Russell Wilson, and where did that get the Steelers? Where did it get Russ? He didn't come back either. So, I think you make a good point there, Chris, but I don't know if it's as much of Rodgers being relieved that, as you like you said, when he went to the Jets, you're right. It was like the savior complex a little bit, I think. And not even just all from his end, but from their end for sure.
Yeah.
Like, all right, lift us up, be the shift in Jets organizational futility. Whereas here it'd be like, be the finishing piece, be the last, part to fall into place for the Steelers that they've been missing. I don't know if he's relieved. I think it's maybe more of just, this is where it's at. I said somewhere today that this situation almost strikes me as like platonic high school friends who never dated, but they're like, hey, if we're both still single when we hit 40, let's make a vow to get married. And it's like, that's kind of how I look at the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. And that doesn't mean it can't be a great marriage, but it just seems like if you had told somebody before this offseason, the Steelers, you're going to go after 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron, you're going to go play for Pittsburgh next year. I don't know if that really would have been written in the stars from either side.
That certainly is a very interesting reference point by you, as far as like a really funny sitcom or
Ted Mosby, Robin Scherbatsky.
Exactly. Harry Met Sally. Yeah, exactly. How I Met Your Quarterback. That's pretty funny. I think that's where we're kind of both at, is that it's interesting, the dynamics that are in play here, but I don't think it's the same as where he's been before. But just because of that, it doesn't mean I don't think that there's anything in the past of where he's ended up that's going to indicate how this is definitely going to go one way or the other with the Steelers. I think there's a lot very much up in the air with how he's going to fit, how Arthur Smith's going to use him. And I still believe, as big as his persona is, as much attention, like we were fighting our way through NFL Network and ESPN's extra people with Brooke and everybody that came through, all the TV stations that brought their extra cameras. We, through all of that, I still think the biggest thing that's going to make the Steelers a better team this year is if the early picks of the Omar Khan era start to mature into the new nucleus of up-and-coming leadership. Broderick Jones, Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu, Keeanu, Benton, Joey Porter Jr. That is going to be the biggest thing, I think. If that crew starts to mold into, more plus side contributors for the Steelers, then that is what's going to make this team a better team. And then Aaron Rodgers can kind of be the quarterback that's like, hey, I'm not going to lose you the game. I'm going to keep you in it. I'm not going to make the big mistakes that Mason Rudolph would, or these things. And I think that can be the thing that works out for both sides, where he's on a team where the tide is just naturally higher and he can just captain it through the choppy waters while they're on a higher tide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it too. Is like, I mean, no one needs to BS anybody here. Aaron Rodgers isn't here for the long haul.
Right.
He's on his last legs, so no player's ever going to answer a question like yours with, "No, I don't really want to be a leader. I'm just going to come. I'm going to do the drills. I'm going to practice, and then I'm going to come out on Sunday and see what we've got." But maybe there is an aspect of it's like, hey, I'm in year 21. You guys give me the money to come here because you need a starting quarterback. I go out and try to give you your best quarterback play you've had since Ben Roethlisberger, and we'll see where this goes. It's not like I'm setting a tone for the long term for this organization from my QB1 spot. This is a short-term solution, perhaps for both sides, and unless, of course, it ends with Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, and Tomlin retires with another Super Bowl win. Arthur Smith gets promoted to head coach, and Aaron Rodgers is your offensive coordinator for the Steelers.
That would be an alternate universe that would be very interesting to see. But we got to deal with reality here. And reality is that while Aaron Rodgers did show up, TJ Watt did not. I want to talk about the impact of that on the Steelers moving forward. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. You know them for helping you when you're injured in an accident, but they also help you with workers' compensation. When you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer is always the same. It's the insurance company's doctors. They won't be on your side. Who will be on your side? Edgar Snyder Associates. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. Again, that's 1-800-94-EDGAR to reach Edgar Snyder Associates. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, let's talk about TJ Watt. Did not show at Steelers minicamp. Mike Tomlin did not seem alarmed. I talked to Denzel Martin, Steelers outside linebackers coach. He did not seem alarmed. He said they've been in contact. Alex Highsmith last week when we talked to him did not seem alarmed. There seems to be a lot of calm with the Steelers. Do you think that that's them whistling through the graveyard, or do you think that there's actually a sense that, hey, TJ Watt may not be here, but they've been through this before. He'll sign an extension, and he'll be playing week 1 when the Steelers play the Jets?
I definitely lean toward the latter, but that's mainly colored by my own personal thoughts on it and predictions, I guess, on it. Because, kind of like, guy answering a question about leadership, it's like, what are the guys going to say if things are not going well with TJ Watt and the Steelers? That I don't think Denzel Martin would be like, I don't know, we might have to start getting these young edge rushers ready. Jack Sawyer, get ready, buddy. Like, I mean, I assume these guys probably have been in contact with TJ. And let's be honest, especially Alex Highsmith, they're going to be team TJ. Like, the players are going to side with the players now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that a little part of Nick Herbig's not like, man, I'm like be a starter if something happens here. But they're always going to want to see their guys get paid by the organization. Like, Alex Highsmith isn't sitting there crunching the salary cap numbers and be like, look who we can afford if we get TJ on this, a hometown discount. So they're always going to say the right things publicly. I'm not sure how much stock we should put into those, front-facing comments with mics in their face when we talk about the TJ Watt Steelers situation, because this is a little different than a few years ago. He was here holding in, if you will. This is closer to your true typical holdout because he's not here. So
right.
Mike Tomlin he didn't completely brush it off. Like everything that Mike Tomlin says, you need to sort of run through the Mike Tomlin translator a little bit. And how often, Chris, do we see him just completely shoot down something like, man, I'm not even going to give my attention to that? Well, no. Right. I mean, today with TJ Watt, he said certainly we would like him to be here. But, yes, he did come back to not really concerned. I think it's going to get done eventually. But TJ Watt's making a leverage play here, I guess, to impart whatever influence he can as a player on the Steelers. And, he's not the only one doing that around the NFL, but he is the only Steeler to do that in recent memory.
I think that's the thing, is that you look at what TJ Watt means to the organization. It signals to me that he's going to be around. Like, I get that JJ Watt's been making those indirect comments on Pat McAfee about paying your star edge rushers before it's time to actually pay them, and this and that. And but at the end of the day, I think that, he might try to drive up the price a little bit, but the Steelers know what the deal is. Myles Garrett's contract, puts the price probably a little over $40 million. They'll pay it. I know some people out there think $40 million, you can't pay that for a non-quarterback. In today's NFL world, you absolutely can. And the money that people like Micah Parsons and Aiden Hutchinson's about to get is going to dwarf that very soon. So, do not be shocked. I think that that's the case there. But Brian, I think that there's a sense that from the Steelers that, hey, this is going to work out. This is going to be fine. I do feel like that's genuine. And like you said, Mike Tomlin did at least not acknowledge, hey, we'd like him to be here, because also, one thing that I've talked about with Alex Highsmith and today with Denzel Martin, or yesterday, that is Tuesday, with the Steelers outside linebackers coach, the Steelers, they want to mix things up more with their pass rush. They want to find different angles, different opportunities that build chemistry in different ways so that they're less predictable where they're coming from, and that teams can't tee off on TJ Watt the way they did towards the end of the season when he only had 2 sacks in the last 4 games. So I think that that's where, if you're the Steelers, you hope that you can find answers there. And you're probably sitting here thinking, well, wait a second, if he's not at practice, how are they going to find that? And if this goes into training camp, how long does this go on? Because then he could hold in from training camp, but then he's not working that chemistry with Alex Highsmith. The Steelers seem not as concerned about that, but I think that's one thing that could play a factor into it. Also, if the Steelers team wants to make another move with the money that they now have, they know that they have because of the Aaron Rodgers contract being done, it could help having TJ Watt's extension done, because that can give them more cap space right now to sign a 1-year guy or to trade for a guy that's going to be around for at least another year. So I think there's multiple reasons why it'd be good to get this deal done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I guess the bottom line is the reason why the Steelers are waiting is they want TJ to drop his asking price, maybe even if it's just ever so slightly. And TJ's not ready to do that yet. And you're right, they don't need to see him this time of year. Now, if it does go into training camp, then I think you can start having more rational discussions about, okay, is this a distraction for a defense that is trying to sort of reset itself after a pretty brutal finish to the 2024 season? It's almost ironic that the Aaron Rodgers, circus is kind of dwarfed TJ's contract status dispute, which, in a normal year, or if Rodgers wasn't here yet, that would be the big story today or Tuesday from minicamp. So, I mean, it's not, definitely doesn't seem as dire as some of what's going on around the league and even just around the division. I mean, look at the Bengals, not just Trey Hendrickson, but their first round. They can't even get their first round pick signed, Chris.
That is a disaster right now.
Jamar Stewart. If you guys are watching this and you follow mainly Steelers podcasts like ours, and you're curious, go do a little bit of research on this Bengals Jamar Stewart. Watch the clip of him talking at his locker on Tuesday. Like, this is why I call the Bengals, even when they've got everything figured out on the offensive side of the ball, they found a way to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow all locked up. They are just a perpetual bad vibes factory.
It is ridiculous. To the quote that stood out to me when Jamar Stewart was at his locker, he said, quote, "I'm 100% right. It should be a no-brainer. In Trey's case," talking about Trey Hendrickson, "it should be a no-brainer too. I'm not asking for nothing y'all have never done before, but y'all," Bengals saying it, "y'all just want to win arguments more than winning games, in my opinion." My goodness, first round
for
pick,
a long time too.
Yes, but like, again, your first round pick, who you're drafted to be the replacement for the guy that you're refusing to pay, is saying that. I don't think I've ever seen a replacement of the player that's being sent away for that player to come in to start ever speak like, yeah, we're on the same page here because we don't like how these guys are handling it. That is a disaster. That is a bad situation waiting to happen in Cincinnati. Also, they let go Jermaine Pratt, and they still don't know what the heck their defense is even going to look like when it was terrible last year.
Yeah, I wonder if they were thinking in Cincy, like, look, we can pit Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Stewart. We'll leverage them against each other. And it's just completely blown up.
And they just became friends.
It's those two banding together and leveraging their own situations against the Bengals. So, yeah, that's what's going on with one first-round pick in the AFC North. Let's talk about what's going on with the Steelers' first-round pick on the defense.
Man, thank you. I was going through that segue, and you did it so nicely because Derrick Harmon is going to be a starter in the Steelers' defense right away? That's not normal. We'll talk about that next year on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by UFC Gym Pittsburgh. If you're looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind, step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training, it's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by third-degree black belt instructors who build confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to the UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about the exclusive 3-month introductory package today. That's at UFC Gym Pittsburgh. We're also brought to you by Boss. Celebrate Dad's signature style. Make this Father's Day memorable by celebrating your dad and his unique style with Boss. Whether he's a trendsetter into the classics or somewhere in between, Boss offers timeless pieces that perfectly complement his individuality. Boss menswear has reached icon status for its tailoring, but offers more than the perfect suit. Boss is now open at Ross Park Mall today with a selection of menswear pieces. Check out Boss at Ross Park Mall. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, Derrick Harmon, Carl Dunbar says, is going to start opposite of Cam Heyward at the defensive end position, which kind of signals they're going to be the top two guys. And I guess Keeanu Benton's going to stay at nose, kind of what Carl Dunbar alluded to when we talked to him earlier. I think it was right after the draft about their plans in the D-line. What do you make of Derrick Harmon kind of already being penciled in, and they haven't even hit training camp yet?
First, a quick aside, a football X's and O's question for you, Carter Critique. Okay. Have we decided, like, what should we call Derrick Harmon in this specific instance? Would you say he's the left defensive end or the left defensive tackle? Have we decided what our, like, layman's term is just when you're – because I was thinking about this when I was writing it today. It's like, obviously I can explain it to somebody, but when you're just simply writing about the position, you're not going to start busting out 3 technique and 5 technique in a newspaper.
He's interior defensive lineman. That's the way that's the way I phrase it, because that covers both D tackle and 3-4 DNs. Whereas if he was an edge rusher like Myles Garrett's a DN, but he's an edge rushing DN. And so that's where I think, people get away with it and saying interior defensive lineman covers, they float between D tackle to 3-4 DN. And I think that's where they're going to have Harmon be a D tackle when they're in the nickel and the dime, but he'll be a DN when they're in the 3-4.
Yeah, but I was just thinking in this specific case, writing about it, it's like, okay, I guess you could say Cam Heyward's the right defensive tackle, Derrick Harmon's the left defensive tackle, and Keeanu Benton is the nose tackle, but never really thought about it that way. I just kind of called them the bookends because that's kind of the easiest way to view a defensive front in your mind in the middle guy's attack.
I think it's an interesting way to look at it, but I do think it's interesting that he's already being given the starter status, especially Brian. I mean, we know how reluctant the Steelers have been to start guys at such a young age. Joey Porter Jr. needed to earn his stripes before he got a chance to get up there. Kenny Pickett when he was a first round pick. I think the last first round pick that Broderick Jones had to deal with this. Troy Fautanu, even though he was injured, pretty early into the season.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been starting. The only starter I can think of that was a first round pick that came in and knew he was starting was Najee Harris. And that's because they didn't have any other running backs.
Maybe this means they don't have any other defensive linemen they feel great about. No, I don't know if Carl Dunbar was trying to light a fire under some of the older guys. Like, hey, this rookie's already in here getting reps before you with the ones, or if he was, trying to say kind of what I just did of like, are you guys crazy? Like, do you see the sort of replacement level dudes we could be running out there? Like, no, Derrick Harmon is starting. Like, put it down. Or maybe Carl Dunbar just be talking in June, and he's like, I'm just going to say whatever comes to mind, and, I'm a position coach. You won't hear from me again until training camp. So, I don't know. It just was interesting because, like you said, Cam Heyward famously – people were calling him a bust. He wasn't playing a lot earlier in his career. But as Cam also always says, look at the guys he had to play over back then. Brett Kiesel, Chris Hogue, Casey Hampton. So, nothing was just going to get handed to him. And I wouldn't really say this is getting handed to Derrick Harmon, but, I talked to him after Carl Dunbar said that before practice, and he's like, he almost didn't even acknowledge it. He was just like, I'm not taking anything for granted. Like, I got to prove everything to everybody every day I show up. I have to show the veteran players and the coaches that I can do it at this level and keep soaking up knowledge and wisdom from Cam Heyward. Like, even if my position coach is sort of unconventionally labeling me a starter on June 9th, does not mean that I'm going to be a starter come week 1.
I feel you there. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with how the Steelers want to deploy their defensive line, with how Aquali fits into this because he was a veteran brought in to kind of be another guy that kind of do what Montravius Adams was supposed to do at times. I've been envisioning this as like, hey, I knew that Derrick Harmon would get a lot of snaps this year, but now it's telling me that maybe even more snaps. Maybe there's less questions as far as when he'll get his snaps because if he is that starter, and listen, the Steelers, they need big guys up front. But like you said, Cam Heyward, it took Cam Heyward, not only did, were there guys ahead of him, but it took Cam Heyward time to figure out his group so that he could become the Cam Heyward that became, the face of the Steelers for several years. So Derrick Harmon, he's going to have that adjustment period, much like, even Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick, for as good as they were as rookies last year in the NFL on the offensive line, they hit their wall at some point, and that's going to be interesting to see where does it happen for Derrick Harmon. But again, I think that this guy comes in with a high pedigree with a lot of skills on his table. It's just going to be about how quickly does he adjust those skills to the NFL level to be ready to take things on, help against the run, take on double teams, help in the pass rush, and be a regular contributor to the Steelers defensive front.
And Mike Tomlin predictably, kind of shot it down when I asked him about Harmon after practice. He's like, haven't done anything. This is football in shorts, basically. We'll worry about depth chart and stuff like that at a much later date. Unless you, if you think Carl Dunbar was sort of speaking out of turn here, just to give you a little bit more context, his interview with us today was largely about man, your defense gave up 299 yards rushing to the Ravens last time we were out there. What did you guys – and Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, was asked a lot about that too, because really our first chance to talk to these coaches since that game. And so I think part of what Dunbar was getting at there is How do we get better? Well, you draft bigger, stronger, better guys. We did that. So maybe he was coming at it from the perspective of like, don't think we took Derrick Harmon to just chill on the sideline, watch and learn from the same cast of characters who were part of that defense that gave up all those rushing yards and got stomped by the Ravens. Maybe that's all it was, but yeah, or maybe it's as simple as they love this guy so far and they think they got a steal where they got him in the first round and he's going to hit the ground running.
Maybe. We will see. But hey, minicamp continues today. Our full staff will be there ready to go. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, tune in to all of the things that we are covering here for Steelers minicamp with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by subscribing to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find all of our podcasts like this show, the North Shore Drive podcast, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video to enjoy. If you enjoy it, and subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as daily content that comes out from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, like Chipped Ham and Football by Brian Batko every Tuesday. Back here later today with more on Steelers minicamp, with more reports from there. Do we get the chance to talk to DK Metcalf? We'll let you know here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.